when you need to stop, it's at the top of your screen, and you say stop share. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, fantastic. I see that we're 1 minute over, so welcome to everyone who's joining us. We have had 65 people register, so I think let's give it a few more minutes. And then Prashina, I'm going to hand over to you.
All right, colleagues, good morning. On my side, actually, it says 10 o'clock. My name is Prashina Mohangi, and I'm responsible for the Built Environment and Planning Business Unit at SALGA in KZN. We are joined today by various partners to bring this webinar to you, a very exciting, interesting topic in the built environment. I know that generally waste sits in different places in a municipal space, and we want to avoid that and bring it into the built environment ecosystem where we feel that's where it belongs, together as a trading service, obviously, for municipalities. So the topic that we want to explore today is integrating waste pickers. It's a conversation on the new guidelines that has been produced by the Department of Environment, Forestry and Fisheries. We are doing this, like I said earlier, with various partners. The first is the Urban Futures Center from the Durban University of Technology, and I'm joined today by Dr. Kira Irwin, who heads the Urban Futures Center, and her team. The SALGA team here today is myself, Prashina, and Slindile Makumolo, who will introduce herself later on. And Slee is responsible for waste management in the province of KZN, and you might have seen her yesterday in conversation at another session that SALGA held together with the provinces of Gauteng and Mpumalanga, where there was a waste minimization conversation that was going on. So we also here in KZN want to pick up on that conversation, and we want to unpack these guidelines. And we want to see how we could use these guidelines to better inform waste management at municipal level. So colleagues, I know many of us are familiar with this virtual background and this virtual way of interacting and the virtual narratives by now. But I just want to quickly show you what the program of the day looks like. So we're together for 2 hours. We're here now at 10 o'clock, and we are due to conclude at about 12. We want to, in the main, have a discussion around the Waste Picker Integration Guidelines, like I mentioned. So the guidelines will be circulated to you if you've not got a copy as yet. And we are joined by Dr. Melanie Samson, who will do that presentation. But before that, we have our colleagues from the National Department of DEFF, together with our provincial colleagues, who are here to support this webinar and to support the guidelines and to endorse it for integration into the municipal space. We will then have a panel discussion, which will be led by Dr. Kira Irwin from the Urban Futures Center. And we have various stakeholders that will form part of that discussion. We will then have an open conversation around the guidelines, but also in terms of the practicality of these guidelines and how they actually work.
Everyone is using Prashina.
Yes. Sorry, I'm not sure what was going on there. And then we will have a closeout and a way forward, which will be led by SALGA, in particular, Slindile Mapumulo. Colleagues, if you can please, in the participant list, if you can please perhaps just state if you're a councillor or non-councillor, and just include your title, if you can, just for reporting purposes, because we will have the Zoom register. And we would then like to, and perhaps just put in your organization that you are representing or the municipality that you are coming in for, that you are representing this morning. That would be great, so that we could have a proper record. So colleagues, from my side, I just wanted to extend a very warm welcome to you. I know it's the start of the long weekend for many of us, and so we've not had a Monday off in a while, and we are all looking forward to that. So the session is not meant to be too long, but we really need to get into the crux of these guidelines and see how we can incorporate these guidelines into our everyday work. Just a matter of etiquette, if you could please just switch off your cameras. I know it sounds like rhetoric all the time when we meet in these platforms, but please, if you could just switch off your cameras, and then if you wanted to raise a comment or a question, you could either do that by voice, by raising your hand, and either Slindile or Kira will take that comment, or you could just type into the chat box. So the session is going to be co-facilitated this morning by both Dr. Irwin and Slee. The first session will be done by Slindile, and then Dr. Irwin will pick up and run through the remaining session. Colleagues, please use this platform to engage, deliberate. Also, let us know some of your concerns and your comments, and perhaps give us, indicate areas where you would need support around waste management. And we want to get to a space where sustainability is not really a buzzword and waste management is not a buzzword, but it's really something that we do. We also want to highlight the work of waste pickers because they play a very integral part in municipal spaces. And obviously their contribution to the decrease of waste in landfill sites are quite immense. And we want to give recognition for the work that they do. So today we are also joined by groundWork, which is a non-governmental organization which represents the waste pickers and the Waste Pickers Association. Colleagues, good morning and welcome then again from me. And I want to now introduce Slindile Mapumulo from SALGA, who's responsible for waste management, and also Dr. Kira Irwin. Slee, over to you. Thank you.
Okay, I was just trying to unmute myself. Prashina has said quite a mouthful. I'm not sure what more to say after you have had your morning welcome. Anyway, my name is Slindile Mapumulo. I'm an advisor for waste whole of environmental management in the province. Now you could start and ensure that the meeting does end around 12:30 the latest. I just were present in the session that we had yesterday with Gauteng and Mpumalanga, which went through the same presentation that Dr. Melanie is going to be giving today. I know it's quite a lengthy presentation, so I don't want to really go too much into talking about what waste integration is and what it is. But I want us, when we go into the conversation, to think holistically beyond just waste management alone, but think about economic development for your own municipality. Think about the social integration of waste pickers into a municipal system, and think about the positive benefits that it comes with. With that said, I'd like to introduce the first representative from the Department of Environmental Affairs, Forestry and Fisheries, Mr. Dumisani Buthelezi. Can I just get an indication whether he is in the meeting already?
Yes, Lee, he is.
Okay. All right. Mr. Dumisani Buthelezi is the Director for General Waste Minimization within the Department of DEFF under Chemicals and Waste Management branch. He has over 12 years experience in the environmental management sector, having worked in air quality and climate change sectors as well. He has also worked with the DTI, focusing on the green industry, which includes your national cleaner production, waste management, industrial energy efficiency, renewable energy, and water efficiency. And then Dumisani has also served as a specialist in SMME support at Pick It Up, the waste company in the city of Joburg. So he's quite well-rounded in terms and well-vested in issues of waste management. He holds a master's degree from the University of KZN. Dumisani, if you can share your screen, if you have a presentation, and welcome to the webinar.
Thank you, Chairperson. May I request that I do not open my video, and I haven't prepared a presentation, Chairperson, for a number of reasons. I was willing to talk through and just introduce the guideline and state our position as DEFF on the implementation and the rollout in municipalities of this guideline. I'm not sure if you'll agree if I could proceed in that way, Chairperson.
Yes, you may proceed. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much, and good morning to everyone on this platform, colleagues. Yes, I'm from a DEFF. I am a part of a team that manages the the implementation of the National Waste Management Act through the National Waste Management Strategy and other initiatives. Maybe I need to specify, Chair, here to say cooperative governance, it's quite critical. In fact, we've emphasized that in the National Waste Management Strategy to say we could only address a lot of waste management issues through cooperative governance. And I therefore thank you for arranging this platform today, where we talk about this critical milestone of Waste Picker integration. I also want to appreciate the relationship that we have with that we have built with SALGA. In particular, I want to thank Mr. Balane Ngobela. I'm not sure whether he's here. He's been very supportive in every initiative, and he's been part of the drafting of the guidelines. So we appreciate that, and we wish to support you in any way possible to make sure that the relationship becomes a success. Please raise any matter that will try and improve our relationship going forward as we try to implement the National Waste Management Strategy and other programs such as the extended producer responsibilities schemes. So, Chairperson, having said that, you'll understand that internationally, the trend of policy making in waste management has shifted in the past 20 years or so. We are no longer talking about collection and disposal. There's a lot of developments around the need for us to modernize the policy on waste management. The focus now is largely on the diversion of waste, minimization, in fact, avoidance, or even now we talk more about the concept of waste or circular economy. Now, when you look at this trend, there's a lot of publications around that. But if you look at our National Waste Management Strategy, it really reflects that transition. If you look at our policies, say maybe from 2000, you'll realize that there has been a significant change in line with that international practice. So now, when we talk about this transition in policy, where we specifically emphasize the issues around the circular economy, around waste, the materials economy, you immediately come across the issue of waste pickers because they remain central in the movement, in the flow of these materials in the economy. They remain central in the avoidance of this waste going to landfill site. We therefore wanted to say the position of the department is firm towards the support of waste pickers. And this is in line with with what is happening in other countries of the developing world. Supporting waste pickers is quite critical in the African context because you know that we are a developing country. Issues of poverty and unemployment are a serious challenge, and therefore governments need to be seen responding to such a challenge. We therefore want to enable the waste sector to contribute into that segment through the support of waste pickers in all provinces. But we also want to encourage, of course, other neighboring countries in the SADC region to consider supporting the cause for waste picker integration. So there is a report, maybe I could mention that there is a study that was conducted by Professor Godfrey from CSIR. There's an interesting finding out of that study that about 70 to 80% of packaging waste was collected, or it's usually collected by waste pickers. That is a significant number, Chairperson, because when you look at the private initiatives for waste collection and you compare that with the contribution of the waste pickers are doing quite a tremendous work on the ground. And if policy says we need to divert and enhance our recycling targets, we therefore cannot ignore the contribution of waste pickers in the collection. We are now talking about the extended producer responsibility. In fact, we're not talking about it. It's a policy position of government, and we need to start implementing from next year. Then the gist or the focus of EPR, it's largely around the increasing the recycling rates under the EPR schemes. And therefore the question is, who will be at the center of this collection? When industry reports, for example, back to the department on the numbers, because we expect that numbers should rise from year 1 to year 5. Then we go back to the role of waste pickers. So we are in talks with industry and the waste picker representative organizations to ensure that waste pickers become central in initiatives such as separation net source that should underpin the EPR schemes as soon as it gets implemented. So I know that Dr. Melanie would go in detail and trying to explain the principles and actually the approach of how municipalities could move forward to adopt the waste picker integration program guidelines into their waste management programs. But then we wanted to say DEFF is available to assist or to talk and plan with various municipalities, because we are at that phase now where we're saying, since the guideline is finalized, we now on a roadshow to sell the guideline to different municipalities. And some municipalities are voluntarily coming to the department to say, we want to start. And in fact, that is a positive response from the work that we've done with Dr. Melanie and the DSI colleagues. One example would be that of City of Tshwane, Chairperson. I'm gonna finish now. That we are doing a pilot on waste picker integration with the City of Tshwane. That is very commendable because the Metro approached us and we are sitting now, European Union and National Treasury are funding the work, the pilot in the City of Tshwane. We hope that the lessons there from the City of Tshwane, the models, would be able to assist other municipalities in other parts of the country. We are also providing additional support as DEFF to waste pickers in the form of PPE. We are finalizing the release of the relief fund. I know that we've been on the news on the COVID-19 relief fund, but we had to, it was our first time to handle funds of that nature for dishing out to the public. We had to make sure that we put in place systems that will ensure that we don't go to Judge Zondo one day to explain how the money flowed from government to the public. And we are also working on the revitalization program for infrastructure. The Working on Waste program has been revived, and waste pickers will be invited to be part of the Working on Waste program. And part of that, the first phase is the revitalization of waste minimization infrastructure. That would be your buyback centers and other infrastructures. We'll be doing an assessment of the infrastructure in the country very soon. And that report will have to guide us to get more money from the National Treasury to support the Working on Waste program going forward. I think, Chair, I was given 5 minutes. I wanted to continue talking, but I think I'll end here for now, and I'll continue to be part of the session for about next 40 minutes, Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your discussion, Mr. Buthelezi Dumsani. It's quite informative to hear what the National is doing in terms of waste management. And I hope this discussion with the municipalities will also give us a scope how as the local government, we are going to be working with National in terms of curbing this issue of waste management. And I'm also happy to hear about the initiatives that are being done at that level. You are really setting the tone for provincial and local government as well. I'm going to share the screen of the next presenter. Unfortunately, I did not get the bio for Unombulelo Zungu, but I know she's here on behalf of the provincial director Noloyiso Walingo, representing the KZN Economic Development, Tourism and Environmental Affairs at TIA. So I'm going to hand over to you, Nombulelo. Please introduce yourself, who you are, and I'll share the screen. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mapumulo. Greetings, distinguished guests, colleagues, everyone. Let me say all protocol is observed. My name is Nombulelo Zungu. I hope the audience will excuse me. I'm technically disadvantaged and I'm unable to use the video screen. As it has been said, I'm Nombulelo Zungu. I'm the Deputy Director assisting Ms. Walingo, who's a Director Pollution and Waste. Also, I'm working for ACTIA. Due to time constraints, let me go straight to the presentation. Let's move. In terms of presentation outline, I'll just run through legislative and strategic context. I'm not going to dwell in that. I'll just run over. Then I'll talk about waste pickers in the province and mechanisms for integration of waste pickers, what we're proposing. And you can see, yeah. Okay, we know the legislation, we obliged to comply with the NDP, the PGDP, and also as a province, we have the Economic Reconstruction and Transformation Plan. If I incorporate that, and I'm dealing with the mechanisms to integrate waste pickers. Next slide, please. Okay, in the province, we recognize the need to upgrade the waste picker status quo to more decent jobs that will contribute towards a sustainable waste economy while addressing key waste streams that are impacting on the environment. We also recognize that the waste pickers are playing a critical role in terms of waste diversion to landfill. That also as a province we're reporting to in terms of the PGDP and so forth. But another challenge we are experiencing is that most waste pickers are not affiliated to any association where they can voice their concerns at the relevant and various platforms that deal with waste management. There is also currently a lack of engagement between us as a province and the Waste Pickers Association, even those that are few on the ground, the association I mean. just to communicate the key problematic waste streams and how we can apply cooperative governance to improve the state of the environment in the province. In April 2020, during lockdown, just at level 5 years, we established a database working with the national department where we were assisted by local municipal officials, the landfill operators, as well as the established registered recyclers that we are working in. And while we're doing that, we came up with 3,015 waste pickers in the province, but 30% of those cannot benefit from government support due to various challenges like the citizen status, unstable addresses, and change of contact details. This is a summary of the database, how waste pickers are distributed throughout the 11 districts. And yeah, you can see that 40% don't have IDs, or only 40% have IDs, 39% have contact details, and only 8% have account numbers. Next slide, please. Okay, now moving to mechanisms for integration. In terms of the National Waste Management Strategy, the one that was gazetted for implementation in January this year, it requires that waste pickers are integrated into the municipal plans. So as a department, since our task is to review and for our executive authority to endorse the waste management plans, we'll ensure that waste pickers are integrated into those plans before they are endorsed by our MEC. We'll also ensure that waste picker integration also find home in our provincial plans, the provincial IWMP, which is currently in progress, as well as the KZN waste minimization plan also in progress that we are working on. Also, I feel there is a strong need for capacity building to the waste pickers. We will be working with municipalities as well as small business enterprise and cooperative units of our department. There is also a need for the local economy recovery plans and local economy development plans to include the circular and waste economy. Okay, in terms of the database for waste pickers as well, where the municipalities will have the database, we feel that they need to fall under recognized associations so that there will be a smooth transition to the full implementation of the guideline. As a KZN, we need to advance a position that says waste pickers are wastepreneurs and not just grant recipients from government. And yes, we'll continue to support and facilitate the integration of waste pickers. Last slide, please. In conclusion, as a department, we acknowledge and commend the work done by various stakeholders in addressing waste management in the province, but we believe we can still do more as a collective, working in collaboration with COGTA, SALGA, SAWPA, or any other association that is for waste pickers, including the municipalities. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you for your brief presentation, Nombulelo, and to hear what the province is doing around waste picker integration. It's very interesting when it comes to, you know, the difficulty in recognizing or establishing even this database, because I know on the ground, the waste pickers, some of them are even illegal immigrants. I mean, people with no ID or not even a right to be in the country. You know, how do we incorporate those people into our systems when they are illegally here? And we can't shy away from the fact that some of them maybe even criminals. It's such a difficult process when you're dealing with it on the ground. I really hope that Dr. Melanie, the guidelines do also explore that angle to say that not all the waste pickers are people that are formal or people that do actually want to be. Some part of a structure do want to be formalized or be in some recognized association. Some of these people are happy being underground and just doing their work and going unnoticed in the economy. How do we incorporate that into our systems? How do we govern people that not necessarily want to be governed? I want to ask to explore that discussion when we go into the presentation. But thank you very much, Nombulelo, for the discussion. It does open our minds a bit. I'm going to hand over now to Kyra, Dr. Kyra from the Durban University to facilitate the next session. But before I do that, I do understand that you were here with Mlungisi Binda and a few other colleagues from the department. Is there anything that they would like to share or add, or are you covered? Okay, no comments from Mlungisi. Kyra, I'm handing over to you to take us through the next part of the webinar.
Thanks very much, Slandile. If you could stop sharing your screen, that would be great. Thank you. Yeah, just to say, I think we now enter into an exciting part of the webinar, and thanks very much for the department for endorsing and showing your support. And we're now going to hear from Melanie Samson about the guidelines, and we've got 3 discussants who I'm going to introduce in a minute. And I think they can also cover some of these assumptions around waste pickers. I see a comment already in the chat just saying, please, can we use the term undocumented rather than illegal when referring to immigrants? And I think that, the issues of waste pickers is also an issue about dignity, an issue about understanding people's lives in rather tough urban environments at the moment. So I'm certainly looking forward to hearing more from Melanie and from Musa, Simon and Luyanda. So very quickly, Melanie is a senior lecturer in human geography at Wits University. She has extensive experience in the area of waste and waste picking. Before that, she was the Africa Waste Sector Specialist for WeGo, working across Africa, Asia, and Latin America. She's been instrumental in doing the research on these guidelines and the primary author of the guidelines themselves. And she continues to work in initiatives looking at waste picker integration, particularly around a more sustainable move away from plastic. So Melanie, we're very happy to have you here today. And after Melanie's presentation, we're going to have a brief discussion panel with 3 people who I think really do offer some fascinating insights that we can start to think more carefully about integration and ensure that it does also, stick with the sort of social justice and environmental justice lens in which this guideline has been written. So Musa Chamani from GroundWork is joining us today. He's the waste campaign manager there, and he's been a big part of working with SAWPA and has lots of experience around mobilization and connecting waste pickers into local, regional, and international movements. And Simon Mbata is with Musa. They're in the beautiful background of Kirstenbosch Gardens at the moment. He's the national organizer of SAWPA, the South African Waste Pickers Association. And Simon has been leading a development and integration site in Vaal Park. So Simon, thank you so much for being here. And the last discussant is Luyanda Schlatzwayo, and he is a reclaimer working in and around the city of Joburg for over 10 years now. He's a founding member and organizer of the African Reclaimers Organization. A very big thank you to all of you for being with us today. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Melanie, and then we'll start the panel discussion afterwards. Melanie, welcome.
Good morning, everyone. I really want to thank the organizers for organizing this really exciting and important webinar session, and for inviting me to speak. And thank you for the introduction. And for me, it is really exciting. I think that, 5 years ago, when we started working on the guideline together as that particular group in 2016, we had no idea that, or I didn't even hope that by 2021 we would already be implementing and people would be very passionate about doing it. So it's not something that DEFF is saying to municipalities and corporates you must do. As Dumasani mentioned, we're getting the really active interest and uptake. And so I'm really excited. And also I'm super excited to hear about what KZN is already doing. And I think that you really are leading the way, and I would love to be discussing more the projects and programs that you are working on. I'm just going to share my screen. While the screen is uploading, I just want to thank Jane Barrett for bringing up this issue of the language that we use. It's incredibly important, and it is correct that in some municipalities like Johannesburg, perhaps even a majority of reclaimers, waste pickers, are undocumented migrants or documented migrants from other countries. And I think Luyanda Khatshwayo can really speak about how to ensure that non-South African citizens are fully integrated. I do want to note that during the COVID relief, the national government, DEFF, did make a point of ensuring that people's status in the country didn't make a difference to receiving food relief. I believe they also provided PPE to non-South Africans. And because corporates are involved in integration in a major way now, and industry due to EPR, they have fewer restrictions on how they can support non-South Africans. And that's why these collaborations are so very important. So with that, I will start my official presentation, if it will allow me. And I just also want to note that Musa, Simon, and Luyanda, who are on the panel, were all members of the committee that developed the National Integration Guideline. I will speak more about that, but they are not just commenting on it, they are people who were actively involved in designing it, writing it, and have always been leading the way, pushing for integration and implementing it now. So it's a really fantastic panel you have put together. So in my presentation, I am first going to briefly touch on the integration requirements, and then look at a research project that I conducted with a large team of students funded by DEFF and DSI, looking at waste picker integration and our findings. I'm then going to provide a really brief overview of the guideline. I think the key thing is that we need to be, today my focus is on just making people aware of what kind of things are in the guideline. But, we need to really be focusing on, training and processes around really understanding it and how to implement it. And I think that's why, the fact that KZN government, provincial government, is looking at facilitating processes is really, really important. Lastly, I'll talk a bit about the research, the implementation project that I'm doing with UNIDO and CSIR, funded by the government of Japan. Part of the project is building capacity for waste picker integration, and we are working with all of the stakeholders, including SALGA and DEFF, on this. So I'll speak to that and the opportunities that could arise. And we won't have people then have the presentations. So the first thing is that integration is the new, and that's what I had never really imagined, 6 years ago, 5 years ago. We completed the guide, which is a true accomplishment, and I think significant. Colleagues, can you? I'm going to turn off my video because I'm getting a message that my connection is unstable. Please let me know if you can't hear me. So in the National Waste Management Strategy that was released last year, 2020, ensured that the guidelines implemented. And it's given deadlines. By 2021, all metros have to have integration programs in place. By 2024, all secondary cities have to have them in place. And so this is why it's really important that SALGA in KZN is picking this up and then focusing on accompanying municipalities to do this. My slides are not wanting to move, but the next slide is really just talking about the fact that we now have the EPR regulations, and that although the wording, it seems, might be changed or is being changed just to improve the language, the EPR regulations, as Dumasani mentioned, do require that industry and EPR engage with reclaimers, waste pickers, and waste collectors, and that they are compensated or remunerated for the service that they provide in some way. I think that language is still being worked on, but the key point there is that in addition to being paid for the recyclables, for the materials, just like when we contract private companies, just like when we recognize the cost of service provision, it's recognizing that, you know, reclaimers have been extracting these materials from our environment for decades and have borne the costs in their bodies and in their time in doing that, but have not been compensated. And so that's an important shift, which I think also can allay some of the fears of municipalities, because I know a concern has always been, but where will we as municipalities get funding to compensate? I think the guidelines are making clear that there's a primary responsibility industry for that. So quickly to talk about this research project, Lessons from Waste Picker Integration Initiatives. It ran between 2016 and 19, and there were two components. The first was, as I mentioned, I worked with a team of 16 Black students, African students from South Africa and from neighboring countries. All of them, except for 3, were women, to conduct in-depth research in 2 municipalities, Johannesburg and Metsimaholo, on the integration efforts that they were already undertaking to learn lessons from them. And the second part of that project was this facilitation of the development of the guidelines. So we were drawing on our research, but we were also drawing primarily on the knowledge from the National Stakeholder Working Group that we workshopped the guidelines together. And on that national working group, we had SALGA, we had the Cities Network, we had SAWPA, we had Arrow, we had several national government departments, we had industry, so it was really quite comprehensive. Now, the interesting thing about the research, the way we approached it is when we look at waste picker integration, we almost always only focus on the experience of the waste pickers. However, local government officials have been working for years trying to work with reclaimers, integrate them to figure out how to do it. And even if they weren't already, now you are required to do so. And so in our project, I had a team of students looking at reclaimers, I had a team of students looking at officials, and a team of students looking at residents to learn about what all 3 groups understood and how they had been affected by integration. And the reports are all on a website for the waste roadmap that I share at the end of my presentation. So I'll just quickly go through some of the findings that I think might be particularly interesting to this group of people. The first finding that was completely fascinating for me is, is the role of residents, which I think we never really think about. And I think when we design separation at source projects or integration projects, we just assume that the local government will design the policy, write the contract, and then residents, we just need to educate them and they'll do what we think they should be doing. And what we found was that there were 5 kinds of residents in these 2 municipalities. First were the ones we all know very well, the wasters. And the wasters are the people who just don't care at all about recycling. Nothing has gotten through to them. And they just are perfectly happy throwing their recyclables in the trash and having it end up at a landfill. The second group were the agnostics. And these were people, 2 different kinds of people. One were people who didn't necessarily separate their recyclables. However, they didn't mind if waste pickers came in and took them from their bins. We know other people, would hostilely oppose reclaimers doing that. The agnostics also include people who were separating materials for official, City of Johannesburg pick it up separation at source projects, but they didn't mind if reclaimers got them first. So they were agnostic about it. The third group were the enforcers, and these were residents who were gung-ho champions of the municipal separation at source projects that were dispossessing reclaimers, and they would get actively involved in that. We have quotes from my students who were, working as reclaimers while they did research, quotes that they gathered of residents, standing by their bins and holding onto their bins and saying to waste pickers, you can't touch this, pick it up, gave it to me, it's theirs. And, as I think Luyanda and Simon will be able to tell you, lived experiences, Luyanda's experienced them himself, of residents and private security companies coming and physically attacking reclaimers, waste pickers to prevent them from accessing the waste. which of course means that they and their families can no longer eat or send their children to school. Fourth is the competitors, and these are people in low-income areas who are themselves struggling to survive, and they have realized that there is value in waste, and that they can earn a little bit of extra income by saving their own recyclables and selling them. And again, this is becoming increasingly popular as unemployment continues to skyrocket, as do prices. And residents have said this separation at source of the municipality, which gives the recyclables to private companies, is never going to work. We are poor. We need to make this money ourselves. Lastly, we have the group of the community integrators, who are people who understand that waste pickers, reclaimers have been doing this work for decades, and they want to continue to support these people in the green jobs they created for themselves. So they will either purposely separate for reclaimers and leave it out for them or give it to them, or even further, as Leanda will probably tell you in Joby, form groups in their suburbs where the suburb decides to actively work with reclaimers and separate for them. So the reason I'm going into this detail is I think this is really overlooked in the design of municipal policies and programs. And we cannot continue to develop separation at source and integration projects where we don't take into account how people are already separating and why, and where we don't look at how do we integrate the already informal integrated separation at source that's happening on the ground. So this is a plea for thinking this through when you plan your separation at source projects. Okay, the next part of the was focused on the challenges faced by us, and I love this quote from Fazile Dabi, who said, "When I attend, all I hear when people speak is how municipalities are getting, but they never think about what leads to those." It was quite powerful for me, and in the research that we did, you are municipal officials, councillors, and so you are aware of these challenges. I won't run through them, but they're low priority, waste picker integration buddies, PIs. While we were doing the research, there wasn't any policy. People have limited time and budget. No money was available from national government. No support was available for national government. People, waste management departments are hired because they're heirs, they have technical experts on waste, suddenly expected to be, facilitating participatory processes. So, I think there's a long list of challenges faced by officials, which, it was important to identify these so we could take them into account when we developed the guideline. And of course, one of the things that came out is that, integration cannot be addressed only by municipalities. Officials said they need national guidelines and targets. There needs to be amendments to legislation. They need funding from national government and industry and education and training programs and guidance on things like bylaws. So this is why I'm so excited to hear the inputs from, Dumasani from DEFF and the provincial representative, because all of these things are now coming into place very quickly. So we are creating this enabling environment. Okay, so I love the comment from the chairperson from the provincial representative, where you said, we have to stop thinking about, waste pickers as, welfare recipients. You're framing them as entrepreneurs, waste entrepreneurs. And this is a key point. So what we identified in our research is that there's generally what I call a charity model integration. And this doesn't apply just to waste pickers. Colleagues, Horn is here, working with street traders. This is quite common in engagements with informal workers across the board. So there's just some assumptions that have been unspoken assumptions that I'm sure people aren't even aware they're making about who waste pickers are and what it means to integrate them. And so the first are that reclaimers are poor, marginalized people who require charitable support. Right? That's what our provincial representative was saying is a problem. So that rather than paying them for the work they do, we're giving them charity by supporting them a little bit. Number two, reclaimers should be integrated via special projects. So we have a little waste picker integration program on the side where we do some units, but the system remains unchanged. Third is that reclaimers perform simple manual labor. They're just using their bodies. Right? And this assumption that they don't possess knowledge relevant to recycling programs. So we plan those programs, plan waste picker programs without ever talking to waste pickers. And of course, even the OECD has said in its EPR regulations that often the only people who have any knowledge or expertise of how to collect recyclables in developing countries are waste pickers, and you need to engage them meaningfully. 5, yes, I've already spoken to this, that reclaimers should just be appreciative participants in projects for them by professionals. And they, similarly to the residents in separation at source, they must just be educated and participate. And lastly is that feedback does not need to be addressed in pilot. So there's a pilot in Johannesburg that's been going on for many, many years. Reclaimers have identified many problems to it. They have lost money by working on the pilot, which is why many quit. Are not made because it's a so-called pilot. So a key thing is we need to look at our own assumptions that we're making and challenge and then work with reclaimers, change those assumptions and to develop you know, a participatory way of engaging. So a first challenge we found in the municipalities is that there's an assumption, which maybe even I had many years ago, that waste pickers work as individuals and they just go and they find a bin and they take things out of it, right? Or they just go to a landfill. But it's not just individuals randomly going into bins. You know, reclaimers have created, waste pickers have created what I call a separation outside source system. You can see it in the picture. It's what we know exists. You know, years before any of the rest of us thought about municipal recycling, reclaimers were going and extracting materials from bins. They were then, you know, cleaning, sorting, transporting, learning about the industry, taking them to buyback centers, selling them, doing the same thing at landfills. And what happens is we've been designing separation at source programs as if that informal separation outside source program does not exist. This is why when we implement separation at source programs that pay private companies and that projects that take people who are poor, unemployed people in a counselor's area who are unemployed and have never worked as reclaimers, even if we make a co-op of them, these companies and cooperatives end up displacing and what I call disintegrating reclaimers, because if they're taking materials reclaimers always collected for their livelihoods, suddenly reclaimers can't get that material. But what happens is reclaimers get some of it because they have to eat. And so the reclaimers' incomes go down, you know, their ability to feed themselves, do basic things goes down, and the companies or cooperatives do not collect the amount of materials expected in their contracts because the reclaimers are taking it. So this is a lose-lose situation. And because streets are open spaces, we will never be able to stop reclaimers from continuing to do their work, despite the harassment and criminalization. So what we found is separation at source overpowers integration. And this is why in the guideline, we are very clear. And maybe this is like the one basic thing. We need to understand that we need integrated separation at source. We cannot continue to design these policies and programs and implement them in isolation because they just undermine each other. And frankly, it's a waste of municipal resources and it doesn't achieve the goals that we want. So get your teams that work on separation at source and the teams that work with waste pickers, make them one team, make them work together with waste pickers to plan proper integrated separation at source. And I'm going to speak a little bit more about that. Now, here I have a slide on the paradox of cooperatives. And cooperatives to date have been the only modality for integration. And I want to note, I'm going to jump to my last point first, which is that for co-ops to work, reclaimers must want them. And this is a point that SAWPA is always making. Their members want to be in democratic, worker-led cooperatives, and they want to be integrated through those cooperatives, right? And that is crucially important. And then those cooperatives need to be properly resourced and paid and mentored and capacitated. But that is not what has been happening in most places. So most municipalities require reclaimers, waste pickers to form cooperatives if they want to be integrated in any way. And that's because, you know, national government has funding and priorities around this. But what happens is they don't receive, I won't go through all of the details that I've provided of the support they don't receive. And this is why Linda Godfrey and her colleagues found that 92% of waste cooperatives in South Africa fail. So we can't keep using something that leads in a 92% failure rate. We need to learn. And for example, in Ekurhuleni, they did a fantastic pilot project with Oxfam Italia, where they provided co-ops with the support that they needed, and they were a success. It also is very resource, you need resources for it. And so here's a quote from a municipal official that said, when we started, we told them, the cooperatives, that the project is for 1 year, Pick It Up will help you to a certain point. From there, you have to sustain yourselves. And then the Pick It Up official goes on to blame them and says, but they can't. Well, of course they can't. Of course they can't, after 1 year, be completely self-sustaining. And no one can be self-sustaining, earning an income just from selling recyclables. The private companies have shown us this. That's why they have to be paid a service fee. So we need to really think carefully about the support that's put in place for cooperatives. And we also need to look at other approaches. So in Johannesburg, we have been piloting a really exciting alternative. I'm from WITS, collaborating with Arrow and Unilever and Packaging South Africa and resident associations. And what we've done is, Luyanda will speak to this more in detail because he leads that project. But it's just to say it's a way in which individual reclaimers are registered. We collaborate actively with the residents. The residents separate for the reclaimers. And then Unilever for now is covering the costs of paying 50 cents per kg they collect as the service fee, which also creates an incentive for them to continue collecting rather than a wage, which wouldn't create that incentive. But Luyanda is the manager of that, so he will speak to it. Okay, I won't run through this because I know I'm time, but just to see you do a top-down approach, which is unique to waste management. It's part of a way that's become common of working in many municipalities. It doesn't work, it fails. Reclaimers are the experts. Waste pickers know how they want it integrated. They know recycling works. Things have to be planned. Okay, so what from the research is there are 7 questions that need to be asked and answered explicitly. And what we found, one reason why projects fall to pieces or there's tensions and anger is because all of the participants, the different stakeholders, have answers to these questions in lines, but they haven't been put in. So we need to negotiate who or what is being integrated into what. Is it individual waste pickers? Is it outside source system? Are we integrated into the existing waste management service delivery model or into a new one which has a certain which values reclaiming being integrated? What's the time frame? Let's not have pilots that go on. Why are we integrating them? As it's not just for economic reasons, it's social and it's environmental. How are we integrating them? Is it only via co-ops? Is it via co-ops that get no funding? Other ways. By whom? Are we going to continue with having officials and professionals sit on their own and plan integration? Or are we saying, as the guideline says and requires, that waste pickers must be centrally involved in the committees that make those decisions and oversee implementation, and in whose interests? Are we only doing this for the municipality's benefit, or are we doing it for waste pickers' benefit? Which means, it seems simple, but a principle of the guideline is waste pickers must not be made worse off financially. And in many of the instances right now, they earn less in our fancy integration projects than when they work on their own. So ask yourselves these 7 key questions as municipalities and meet with reclaimers and ask them again and see what answers you get. And in the publication, you'll see I have a whole list of other questions and the extremes of the positions that you can adopt. You can see that in the documents, and in our training material, we'll go through it. So just to say in conclusion around that piece before I briefly, say a few more words to finish the presentation, the main thing that came out of our research is process and engagement are key. And we have examples here. In Brazil, for many years under President Lula, there was an interministerial council on, their equivalent of waste picker integration, right? On catadores, and working very closely with the waste picker movements. And at local level, they have waste and citizenship forums. We need these participatory structures. We need the enabling environment. And a key point, which I'll talk about in the guideline, is we cannot continue to expect waste management departments to do all of this work on their own, because people in LED must be involved. They have the skills, they have the resources, people in social welfare, etc. So That's what Brazil has taught us. Okay, so in terms of the actual guideline, if you haven't seen it, here's the beautiful cover. And Dumisani mentioned, I think, that they will share it. I've spoken already about the process, and the key thing about the guideline is we wrote it to be implementable, which is why maybe half of the document is taking us through a 7-step plan for a municipality of how you can develop an implementation, a waste picker integration plan with waste pickers. And a key part of the guideline is we know you cannot have the same approach to integration in Durban as you do in Tabazimbi. You know, it has to be specific to the location. Okay, so these are the sections of the guideline, and we focused on it being very educational. So if you read the first 3 sections, ABC, you will have a very good understanding of what waste picker integration is, learning from our experiences and internationally, as well as in-depth research and the experiences of the stakeholders. We then present the principles, and although we can't say how everyone must, the model, the principles must be abided by. We then identified common challenges to be addressed as part of integration, and that's in section E and in one of the annexures in section K. And go to the annexures, it was really quite fun. You know, we got every single stakeholder to think, you know, as industry, what are the main problems they have? As waste pickers, what are the main problems they have? As municipalities, what problems do you have? And then we brainstormed some ways you can address these as ideas. The enabling national environment, and then the 7 steps. Oops. And so here's the definition of integration we have in the guideline. Waste picker integration is the creation of a formally planned recycling system. Okay, so the municipality is formally planning this together with industry and waste pickers that values and improves the present role of waste pickers, builds on the strengths of their system to collect and revalue materials, and includes waste pickers as key partners in its design, implementation, evaluation, and revision. And then there's recognition that this is not just about integrating their work. It's political, economic, social, legal, environmental integration. And Leonda will hopefully get a chance to speak about the incredible work that we've done in our pilot in Joburg of integrating reclaimers and the residents, so that now more than 80% of residents say reclaimers are part of their community. Okay, here are the principles. There's 10. Recognition, respect, and redress. This is basic, and it's not the current reality. 2, waste pickers know best what they want. That means they need to be involved in designing it. 3, there needs to be meaningful engagement. That means we don't just develop a plan and have a little meeting to consult. We need to build on what exists. It needs to be cost effective and increase diversion. It must be evidence-based. And often we decide to, you know, contract a private company with no evidence. And I will tell you, the contracts in some municipalities are outrageously overpriced and expensive. 7, enabling environment. 8, we need to improve the conditions and incomes of reclaimers. We need to pay reclaimers, waste pickers, for the services they provide and the tremendous savings they make for municipalities. And we need a holistic approach. Okay, so here's a list of 10 basic actions, you know, that you can really start doing without any new resources, most of them. The first is understand waste picker integration, which you're starting to do today. You need, as a municipality, to commit to it, and you need to start engaging waste pickers. And you know what? If they're not organized, you need to provide resources to organizations that can help you to organize them. You know, whether that's an NGO like GroundWork when it first started supporting SAWPA, whether it's, you know, obviously the reclaimer organizations themselves, but that's our responsibility as municipalities and industry and national government, is to support waste pickers to organize. We can't just keep saying they're not organized and throw our hands up. Facilitate access, and that's not just to resources, you know, stop harassing them and preventing them from getting materials. Stop kicking them out of landfills, find structured ways for them to be there. It's also access to yourselves, because a key point, you know, that waste pickers, waste picker leaders, organizations always say is they cannot get a meeting with anybody in the municipality to talk about the issues. That's a super easy thing to change overnight. We need to start by focusing on reversing the harm that we're doing. Do we have separation at source projects in place right now that are stopping waste pickers from feeding their children? If we do, how are we going to reshape those for the extent, the duration of the contract, and how do we make sure we don't do this again? And we need participatory planning. Okay, I'm not going to go through examples of integrated separation of source. The experts are on your panel, so they can speak about some of those. And I just want to show you the 7 steps. So we've identified 7 steps. If you're a municipality and you know that by, if you're a metro, the end of this year or by 2024 as other metros, you have to have a plan. What do? First, you prepare internally. You get a team that is multi-departmental, that has all the skills you need, and you educate yourselves and you prepare to engage, because the second step is crucial. And this is where you're engaging with the waste picker reclaimers, the organizations, but also you are finding ways to help them to be organized and to engage them so that you partner, and this is an agreed process, and you work together. Then you collectively plan, and part of planning is to do an analysis of what exists. How are your recyclables currently being collected by reclaimers? What co-ops are there? What organizations are there, etc. And based on that analysis, then you can begin to plan. We need to know what exists. It's the creation of the enabling environment. How do we, make sure there's the resources for this? It's institutionalization, which again, I'm totally thrilled to see the provincial department is already working on. How do you put this in your IWMP and your IDP? Then you implement, and then a key part is monitoring, evaluation, and revision. We need to revise. So for each step in the guideline document, you'll see we provide background information. Why is it important to prepare, right? And objectives of preparing, and key questions that the participants in that step need to ask yourselves. This is the key. We cannot give you the answers because your local situation is unique. We can tell you what questions it would be good to ask, and we can suggest some actions. Okay, so this is the process which, I think DEFF and the UNIDO project and your provincial government are saying they can support you to work through. I will skip this. I just want to take 2 minutes to mention the UNIDO project that I'm working on in collaboration with all the stakeholders. We did research on what the top priorities were for all of the key stakeholders. And what was really interesting, top priorities for capacity building for integration. The number 1 priority that also came from municipal officials and elected representatives was training for municipal officials to understand the guideline and work collaboratively with waste pickers to implement it. So as we've heard, there's already a number of processes around this, but the project that I'm running, I will mention what we're doing. A key thing, isn't it interesting? Look at numbers 2, 4, and 5. The capacity building that really is needed mainly for municipalities is land and space. The simple thing you need to do is give reclaimers, waste pickers spaces where they can store and sort their materials. We have a situation in several municipalities where there are corporates and international donors who are super keen to pay for infrastructure and equipment, but we cannot accept those donations because the municipalities have not released land. So this is a simple thing that can be done. And I think if national government mandates this or requires it, it will be easier. So our key project activities, we are currently in the process of developing resource materials and guides for municipalities on key issues and processes related to waste picker integration to support you in doing this work. We are working with SALGA. Bala, we need to meet to see more directly how DEFF is being involved. You've already been involved, but we need to get to the detailed planning. And we are very keen to hear from you today and ongoing discussions. What are the key resources and guides and materials you need? We're going to pilot those materials. We have some funding to train integration facilitators. So that's something we could possibly work with KZN on. And we've been talking with Bala around what kind of processes could SALGA have to accompany. And then very soon, we're going to be creating a community of praxis online. Anyone in the country who's interested in integration, who's working on integration, a space where we can come and learn together and share our experiences and share our problems and support each other. So I just want to end by thanking you for giving me so much time to go into this detail, and to say that I really want to hear what your needs and ideas are, and I'm looking forward to the inputs from the panel. Thank you so much.
Melanie, thank you so much. Sure. Yeah, fantastic, and so much to think about. And thank you too for starting at the right place, which is trying to understand better and tackling some of the assumptions that are out there. Melanie, if you don't mind, just to stop sharing your screen, please, that'd be great. It's at the top of your, wonderful. Thanks so much. And thank you as well. We're going to definitely come back to that question of what are your key needs? What sort of things would assist in making this easier in municipalities? But before we do that, I would just like to get our 3 panel discussants, just briefly, like 3, no more than 5 minutes, just your initial responses to some of the presentations today, or perhaps you'd like to highlight again some of the things that you think are really important in these discussions. And so, Musa, can I hand over to you first, please?
Morning, everyone, again. And thank you for organizing this, Kira. And thanks, Melanie, for the good presentation. I'm really excited about this call or about this webinar because it's speaking directly to municipalities. Because we can plan everything at the top, at a national level. We can do research at different universities. But if we don't have a buy-in from municipalities, this thing is not gonna move. So it is very important that municipalities take the waste picker issue as a serious issue, and officials at municipalities, they should not rely more on councillors, because we had lessons that you have learned when it comes to councillors. You find that councillors will bring people, like for instance, say there is a project starting, a recycling project, they will bring people who doesn't understand anything about waste just because they are employed and just because they have voted them in. And all of such problems, they lead to the failure of recycling projects. So it is important that the officials themselves who are responsible, the waste management officers or whoever working at the LED unit of each municipality, they go out there themselves so that they can get relevant people who can come and work in such projects. And I can't stress it more what Melanie has done to say it's very important to say there will be nothing without us. There will be nothing for us without us. So there should be no discussions about waste pickers without involving them to plan and all of that, because when you go back to the ground, whatever that you were thinking may be wrong. So the best way is to make sure that waste pickers are involved all the step of the way. You make sure they are involved even at the inception of the project up to the implementation of the project. And yeah, I'm really excited. I hope that this will be done nationally in all the provinces so that we can have inroads when it comes to waste picker integration. For now, I'll stop there. And yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much, Musa. If you and Simon are able to turn your video on, I think it would be great just when you are giving your feedback. It's always nice to see faces. Simon, can we hear from you, please? Your thoughts. You're still muted, Musa and Simon, sorry.
Okay, I'm really sorry, I haven't realized we are muted. But now you can hear us. Thanks everyone, thanks Melanie for the nice presentation. Thanks Kira for organizing this event. And as SAWPA, we really appreciate efforts like this where we engage, we interact with officials in terms of the integration of the waste pickers. Firstly, Kira, when we started this whole processes, it's after waste pickers engaged the national government. Then there was a saying to say, now what do you want? People believed that waste pickers are informal, they need to be formalized and all that. But as waste pickers, we said, and it should be clear when processes of integration are starting, to say that waste picking has two phases. You start as a worker in the morning, you end up in the afternoon as an entrepreneur or a wastepreneur or a business person where you sell your material or you exchange with your materials. So it has that two faces, and as SAWPA and most waste pickers didn't want to lose that. That is why it was most important to talk about integration rather than formalization, because formalization could take one side, formalize you as a worker or formalize you as a business. So we wanted to be those two elements to be involved when waste pickers are being supported and assisted. Secondly, issues of cooperatives. I always have this challenge of what Melanie has presented in terms of the failure of waste cooperatives. I think the narrative should change, because those that failed never involved waste pickers, and this was not part of integrating the waste pickers. What happened, they were supposed to fail because they overlooked waste pickers. There was money to support cooperatives. Waste pickers were overlooked. That's why that 90 or 82% of them failed. And we need to correct the narrative to say that waste co-ops are failing. No, these were not waste picker cooperatives. And it has to be clear, because we never participated in those cooperatives. So far, cooperatives that were established and assisted of waste pickers are still up and running. I think that's the number that is left. And also, when we talk of integration, we're not only focusing on municipal waste management systems only. Government is providing fund. We will always be saying there has to be favorable or maybe accommodating environment created by municipalities. But also we need to talk about the economy of recycling, which most people are overlooking. As SAWPA, we are saying we want to be integrated in the whole value chain. We need to know what is happening with the prices of these materials. We need to engage the private sector. We can't be pushing government and local government to say, put infrastructure, put support for waste pickers. Then at the end of the day, we are quiet about the pricing of these resources, because nobody knows what are the true values of this recyclable material. We need to go deep down there so that we believe in a whole value chain integration. I think something also that needs to be looked when we integrate waste pickers, top-down approach. Melanie touched that a lot, whereby officials or municipal workers or those that have money will decide and think what they decide will suit or fit to the waste pickers. Waste pickers have knowledge. Most of them have more than 15 to 20 years experience. Every day when you are at your work, you try to think how possible, how good you can get your work. What are the easiest way to get your work? Get it clean, get it as easy as you can. So waste pickers, they've got that know-how in terms of what needs to be done for them, rather than people sitting in offices, then planning. The other thing, the local economic development in many municipalities should be brought in to be part of integration, because they design waste projects like those cooperatives that Linda is so talking about, or maybe did research. Those were not waste picker cooperatives. Those were cooperatives run through the local economic development of comrades and people in the township who are unemployed or who are looking for jobs. But waste picker cooperatives will always succeed. We are saying the local economic development should wake up. Most municipalities have offices of local economic development. They are asleep. They are far from the waste sector. Whenever they come with new things and they want to impose them. I think in short, we need to have various actors when we do integration. Let's not forget that it's about the waste management system. It's about the economy of waste. it's also about the social being of waste pickers. Thank you.
Simon, thanks so much. Very important points and an open call to collaborate and work together on this. Thanks, appreciate that. Right, Luyanda, would you like to share your video and give us your thoughts, please? Looking forward to hearing from you.
Hi, Chair, how are you? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm very honored to be invited in this platform. I think it's a milestone for reclaimers to be able to engage in these levels and being the only reclaimer, the platform. I'm really, thank you very much. I agree with Simon in certain terms about the cooperatives. Cooperatives work in different municipalities. Cooperatives don't work in other municipalities. Why cooperatives don't work? That's because most of the reclaimers in South Africa are not South African residents. And the cooperative system only respects South African residents. Now, what happens is that when we start statistics that say 80 to 90% of reclaimers in South Africa are collecting 80 to 90% of the cycle, you're not talking about South Africa, we're talking about the entire collection system. You're not talking about South Africa. Now, that's the first reason why the cooperatives never work. Number two, reclaimers were not organized. Now reclaimers are organized. Now we need to ask ourselves, there's many different ways of being organized. Now there are other areas where reclaimers have been organized out of resistance. I'll make an example. When the relief fund, when we heard that the relief fund is coming out to register, some of us were very resistant to it because some of the people were not included. A person that doesn't have any documentation at all was not included. That is why some of us were resistant in applying for it. And what does that do? It doesn't give the city the proper data that they need. Inclusiveness is the only way integration is going to happen. If we don't integrate community, if we don't integrate claimants, if we do not integrate municipalities, it's a complete waste of time. But if we want to make decisions for reclaimers and we don't get that buy-in, it's not going to work. Now, as I said, we are organizing ourselves. If we are getting to the point that we're starting to understand the issue, and we're starting to understand that we are the providers of the raw material. Now, when a lot of people start organizing themselves and they run the raw material, they start understanding how the system is working. It's very important that integration that we are talking about doesn't have any public sector to take. Otherwise, it is not going to work. Thank you.
Luyanda, thank you so much. Wise words. And we're very fortunate to have all three of our discussants here, as well as Melanie. We couldn't ask for, I think, a panel that could take our questions and queries, better than we have. So what I'd like to do now, and if you don't mind, if we could stop sharing the screen just so we have a sense of everyone in the room, I think we're going to open up to a discussion. And please feel free to write questions in the chat. I can try and field them there, but we're very happy to take questions or statements, in person. So if you've got questions you'd like to direct to any of the speakers here today, or perhaps even, I know Dumasani is still here from DEFF as well, and thank you for staying so long. Please do feel free. So you can raise your hand, or if you can't find the raise your hand function in Zoom, which is in the reactions down at the bottom, please feel free to turn on your video and I'll know that you would like to speak. But we'd love to hear back from all of you. Yes, Stefan.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Sorry, I'm fiddling here with the screens and everything. Thanks for the invitation. It was very informative listening to everyone speak. It is good also to see the faces of the people that you always see in the email trails and everything. So, but yeah, I just wanted to say hello and thank you. And then I wanted to talk about the forum that we have here in the city of Tshwane. And we go Arrow, SAWPA, they all helped to create this forum, and the waste pickers are part of the forum, the ROMS group on the northern side, here in Centurion side, the CAMS group. But when everything was ratified and the terms of reference was agreed upon and everything, the city themselves and the waste pickers and all of the organizations agreed to this. And in the points, in the terms of reference, it was pointed out that the city must bring in all the other relevant departments to help formalize the waste pickers. And one of the big issues that we have is that in this whole forum, instead of people coming in, extra people from extra departments coming in, over time, it seems that the city has decreased the number of people and representatives from the city that can actually have a say. That it is always someone that has to go to the next person and ask the next person, listen, can I do this or not? So it wastes a lot of time when the forums are like that. And it would be good when these talks are going or getting going, that a sort of a request is made to all the metros to say, listen, because this is an issue that has so many facets to it, like there's law and order that it needs to get involved, there's security to get involved with when a spot is identified. And just on the spots that or the land that the city or the metro here has been like they've been sidestepping the issue a bit, is because they claim that the reclaimers are doing an industrialized function, like they are taking the recyclable material and they are reworking it into something else, which is not the case. And so they say that this action can only happen in an industrial zone. And with their plans now is to move all of the reclaimers out of the city limits and onto the fringes near to the or in the industrial areas, and that would remove them so far from the catchment area where they get the product. And yeah, so it is a very important thing.
Sorry, thanks, Stefan. Masawin Kosi, sorry, your mic is on. Muting it, please.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
Masawin Kosi, do you mind muting your mic, please?
Oh, apologies.
No problem at all. Stefan, thanks. I think that's very interesting. And if you don't mind, just for those who don't know you, would you just briefly introduce yourself, please?
Oh yeah, sure. Name is Stefan van der Westhuizen. I'm just a resident here in Centurion, and I saw some waste pickers 6 years ago, and I started working with them and trying to get their story out into the general public, to try and get people to have a favorable view of them. And yeah, that developed from there into trying to get them to organize into worker cooperatives, because I saw that the city and everyone is basically ignoring them, and the only way to go forward is to go through workers cooperatives where they've got some autonomy and business laws that would protect them if they are not being protected on the human rights laws. And I founded an organization called Rubicon ZA. It's an NPO, And yeah, that's what we're doing currently, organizing behind the workers, supporting them with whatever we can.
Thanks, Stefan. That's great. Thank you very much for sharing that. Please do feel free to write comments or questions in the chat, or again, if you would like to raise your hand and actually present the question into the floor, which will be fantastic. I just want to point here that there has been a suggestion that SAWPA newsletters could carry every 2 weeks stories on possible integrations to start this conversation going. I think that's a great idea. And Musa, perhaps you'd like to come in and talk about the importance of building capacity at a very local level. And please, colleagues and participants, do put up your hand if you have a specific question for any of us. But Musa, would you like to discuss that, the importance of local level capacity building?
Yes, thanks, Kira. Yeah, it's just a suggestion that it will be nice, because it will be nice to feature in a newsletter to talk about integration, so that we make sure that, because I believe that these newsletters, they definitely go to each and every municipality in the country, so that officials will start to understand when we talk about waste picker integration and all of that, because these guidelines are specifically to guide municipalities as to how they could go about trying to integrate waste pickers in their waste management systems. So I thought that's one point which is very important that needs to be considered, but we need to be guided by SALGA on that as to how we can do that. I don't know how many times do they produce their newsletter a year, but they will guide us on that. The other thought that I just had, Melanie, I think I might have some budget. Sometimes we should not write everything down to impart the information. I think we need to have a guide video, a short video of not more than 10 minutes, guiding municipalities as to how they could go about integrating waste pickers in their waste management system. Something that a new official who's getting exposed for the first time in waste management issues, they can just watch this video for 10 minutes, then boom, the answer as to how they should go about, a researched answer as to how they could go about integrating waste pickers. That could also play some role, rather than focusing on producing thick documents, which most people are lazy to read and all of that. So a video as well will be crucial to say we do a video as to how we could go about integration of waste pickers. Thanks.
Thanks, Musa. I think those are very, very useful ideas. I'm going to come to Dolly. Your hand is up, and then there's a few questions in the chat, and then I'm going to, I think let's do Dolly, and then Melanie, you say you'd like to have a response, and then I'll bring up a few comments that have come in the chat. So Dolly, over to you.
Thank you very much, Kyra. My name is Dolly Mafa. I'm from City of Tshwane. I'm in the unit called City Sustainability. In this call, I think I have my colleague Mamonare. I will apologize, my network may be very much poor, but I want to appreciate this session and the efforts that are made, especially around this sector. And I think we really have to comment where it is due to and Simon. I think it is a proper a transformation directive that you are giving in this ground, and I think for most of the municipality, this is one of the information that is required to guide the decision. You know, I'm sure as a municipality or as an institution, you want to commit on something that you properly understand and you know the rule. Melanie, is a nice presentation that you make. For me,
sorry, Dolly, 1 second. Siphelele, please can we ask you to mute your Siphelele, can you mute your mic, please? Or can I ask Tebogo, can you please mute as host Siphelele's mic? Prashina, are you able to ask or sincerely plead that Tebogo can mute Sipolele's mic?
Yes, I'm able to. I'm asking him.
Thank you very much, Dolly. My apologies. Please continue.
Yeah, I was saying that the presentation from Melanie, for me, is a breakthrough into this platform. I think from City of Tshwane, we want to try our best to support this program and the integration intention. My input from what Melanie was presenting, I don't know if I'm allowed to do it because I'm aware that I have to give myself time to read into that 140-page guideline. But for me, it is something that is gonna guide the way we approach the integration in the city. But I always emphasize to say that in as much as we come up with this nice guideline, it has to be very much, it should not be dumped in the air and left in the air. There has to be clear role clarification. There are 3 spheres of governments that has to play a role in the integration process. It has to be clear what are the roles of the official, what are the roles of the reclaimers, what are the roles of the resident, and I hope it is well articulated in there, especially she was nicely presenting the basic actions. I was very much interested in the action number 2, which she was saying that we need to commit. We have to understand what are we committing for, what are the resources, and what is available. And for me, that is what is key. That is what is key for us to make a position as a city to say that this is what we are committing and this is the resources that we are having. She also made an outline of the principles that are there. And the 2 principles that I'm interested is the one that I'm talking about. We should not make the waste pickers or reclaimers to be financially worse off in all what we are doing for. At what stage are we going to come up with a pricing regulation or a pricing guideline? That is why I'm supporting someone what he's saying, to say the economy of recycling has to be well articulated. And I think this is the platform where we have to be clear. In as much as we're coming up with a guideline, let's come up with a pricing guidelines to say when these reclaimers are selling a product, this is how it should be guided. If we leave it at this stage, we'll never get it as we move. That is what I always make an input on. But generally, I say thank you very much for a good input and the discussion. Thank you.
No, we appreciate that. Thank you, Melanie. Can I hand over to you? Perhaps you'd like to handle some of those directly.
Sure. No, first of all, I just want to reiterate how exciting this forum is and to really thank everyone for putting it together and for coming and participating. I think this is a game-changing conversation. And yes, I know the guideline is incredibly long, and I think it was important to be thorough. But now what the UNIDO project is about is breaking it into those pieces. And Musa, we completely agree. We've been talking a lot about how could we create, for example, a series of videos, you know, that match the different stages, that give people the information they need, plus the actions. So if you have resources and if, you know, groundwork, SAWPA, whoever would like to partner on this, let's get together and talk about that. One of the things, just so that people know, we're trying to do is we have experts in other countries, you know, movements that have designed, you know, municipalities and movements that have worked together, and we're seeing if we can use UNIDO resources to go, for example, to a municipality in Brazil where they had a successful engagement and do a little video focusing not just on what they've done, but on why they did it that way and what they learned. So there are lots of creative ideas, and I think I will talk to the organizers about this session, about how we can continue an engagement with everyone here who's participating to get your ideas. And in terms of the colleague from the city of Tshwane, I mean, we would be thrilled to be able to provide some more support there. And so, and the idea of going through the SALGA newsletter is fantastic. So we need to really be looking at these creative ways and galvanizing our resources. And I think it's something I'm really loving, that people are aware whatever we do needs to be useful for everyone else, and that we shouldn't replicate resources. So I've put my email address in the chat box. Please email me if you want to continue these conversations, but I'll also, talk to the organizers about how we can convene ongoing discussions around this. But I think given KZN's interest, maybe we can do some really exciting piloting, working all together in KZN. Thank you.
Thanks, Melanie, and thank you, Dolly, for that. Please feel free to raise your hand if you have another question, but there has been some questions in the chat which I think are interesting to raise. I'm just going to bring 3. So Jenny Grass was asking about the project with Unilever, the pilot that was run, and whether there were any plans to extend that. That's one. And there has also been a question from Tasmi. Nice to have you here, Tasmi, as well. Just asking, like, is there any evidence where formal waste management systems are specifically limited? In other words, like incinerators and such, and especially thinking through how waste reclaimers and waste pickers might also be able to leverage arguments for support around climate change. And then there's one last comment that was just around thinking through the private incentives and how the private sector could provide incentives and what the panel thought of that. So Luyanda, I see your video is on, so I'm going to jump straight to you.
Thank you very much. I think I'll first answer about the Unilever project. It was based mostly on integration, what I'll say. How do you integrate everyone into the circular economy? From the people that produce the material, people that dispose the material, to the people that collect it. So what we did is we integrated flavors, we integrated Unilever, and we integrated the community. So that we started in a community of Brixton and Auckland, where it started by educating residents on who the claimants are, what the claimants collect, and how you can actually support the claimants. Now, as Melanie said, Unilever came in with the top-up fee of 50 cents a kilo. That was used as we made an example of a service fee, where if, for example, if a reclaimer collects 11 kilograms, for example, by 50 cents, that would be 150 rand of the service, which I strongly believe is kind of fake. So it literally started there. It was an integration process. Now, what we saw is within the process, number one, it eliminated everyone that was not a reclaimer. Number two, it showed consistency even during COVID when all industries were closed, who couldn't sell. Reclaimers that were in the project were still able to go and do collections because they were being paid that top of fee. So they were still being able to earn an income out of it. Now, the biggest highlight of it was the tonnages that we were actually able to collect. Something that municipalities, the local municipalities, had never responded to. We're able to get the true nature of this is how much payments actually collect in this area. Now, what it did is actually give us an opportunity to open the very same program in probably 8 different communities, where unfortunately municipalities don't want to come in and support, but residents fully understand because of this education part of it that happens. Now we're able to get reclaimers in those gated communities where people are not allowed to go in and reclaim. Because now residents start understanding the importance who reclaimers are, start getting that engagement coming in. Residents will ask, why are you guys wearing masks? You look like criminals. And reclaimers will answer, no, we're wearing masks because we're running sick. Must start separating material. So it created that platform. Now without that engagement, it is important for municipalities to cover everything. And how do they do that? Facilities of land, infrastructure. Without the support of the municipality, it's not going to work. But currently, retainers in the city of Johannesburg are slowly taking over small communities, small complexes, and it's growing slowly, but it's getting there. And the beautiful thing is that the city is not getting those steps. The city is not getting that data because the city is not inclusive to all reclaimers. Now, we need a system that's going to be inclusive of everyone so we can get all the data that we need to get. This is how much reclaimers are taking out of Brixton and Auckland Park. This is how much reclaimers are taking out out of that very small loop and get the actual thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Yanda. Thank you very much. Musa, you would like to come in here, or Simon?
Yes. I wanted to highlight one thing here, Kira and the team. Actually, we've got lessons around the country. You find different models. We even have separation at source model when it comes to material recovery facilities that are operated by cooperative of waste pickers. It's not to say something it's being started from scratch. We've got some lessons that you can learn in different places, and people should feel free. They can consult Melanie or Simon or myself. We can point them to the right directions, take you to a best municipality who are doing this, who are working with waste pickers. It's already happening in different places. Like in the Western Cape, you find that each municipality, local municipalities, they have small material recovery facilities. You can see that even though it's not perfect, but it's a start. So I would really encourage that all the municipalities, they need to start something, no matter how small scale it is, but there should be something that needs to be started. As Dumisane was saying at the beginning of this, that we are no longer saying we're only using Municipal Systems Act that only talks about collection and disposal. The ball has rolled a little bit. We have to look at a reduction. We have to look at minimization and recycling. So that is very important to note. I know that whenever we have meetings with SAWPA, like national meetings, all provinces represented, they're talking about having small material recovery facilities in different wards. Imagine every ward in South Africa is having a material recovery facility, and all dry waste goes to that recycling center. Everything further gets separated and it's ready to go to the market. Our recycling rates as a country would reach zero waste to landfill before 2030 if we could all adopt such a methodology to say, let's try and do this. So that's all what I wanted to say. And Simon is with me here. He also wants to say something.
Yeah, thanks, Kira. As Musa has shared most of our thoughts, but I think, again, the most important thing to integrate waste is because we need to adopt a certain form of a system, like separation at source, like zero waste principles, that will make integration easy. If we stick to the same waste management system and say it will integrate waste, because it's going to be difficult. We have a zero waste vision in the country. If our integration can be aligned in that zero waste principle or vision, I think we can make it in South Africa. Secondly, the issue of cooperatives in South Africa, we have a very good history in terms of the successes of cooperatives. Look at the commercial farmers where they are today. They were poor guys who were assisted to form cooperatives of farming. They are where they are. We need to take a lesson in terms of supporting cooperatives rather than listening to researchers that discriminate or that discredit cooperatives. Because cooperatives, it depends on how they were formed. Those that failed, they failed because people said there's money for cooperatives, come register and do a cooperative. But if you take people, that's why SAWPA is always saying, let's build worker cooperative models, where a worker becomes a cooperative executive member or becomes, they own the cooperative, workers own cooperatives, rather than those cooperatives which were designed for comrades to use waste pickers. That's why they failed, because as waste pickers, we were aware and we retaliated. That's why most of them failed. But there's good lesson in South Africa to say waste picker cooperatives can reach the level of a commercial farmers cooperative if we can put enough support. Let's not shy away to support cooperatives. That's my intake. Cooperatives are one way form of integrating, and they made it easy for government to support a number of people rather than pushing individuals who will be greediness or who will create havoc in the system. A cooperative, if it's one member, it's no more than, cooperatives can still go. But individuals, once something happens to an individual, then the whole system or the processes could stop. That's why we believe in cooperatives, and we say, in South Africa, we have a good lesson. Let's look at commercial farmers. Thank you.
Thanks, Simon. And there is quite a lot of activity in the chat, so please do check that out. Participants are also answering some of the questions. Rico's answered Tasmi, and I see Ellie has also put in some more information about the Brixton pilot, as has Leander, so please do also follow that. I know, Melanie, you would like to come in again, and I'll hand it over to you. I just wanted to check, Musa, are you happy for me to share your email with participants?
Yes, I'm happy. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic. So I'm going to place myself and Musa's email in the chat. If you want to continue these conversations and think through ideas about how we might bring municipal officials into conversation with waste pickers and with other stakeholders, please do email us. We're very open to having conversations about how to do that here in this province. Melanie, over to you.
Great.
Sorry, Chair.
Oh, Sahar Dumasani, yes, you want to jump in quickly?
Yes, just before Dr. Samson, I apologize. I do not have a hand on the
no
on
problem.
the platform. Yes. So then I wanted to request that we revive the task team that was set to put together the guidelines. But in this task team, we want to work with provincial SALGA. And this should allow us now to penetrate to municipalities per province, because I believe that if we tackle these challenges provincially, we'd be able to identify problematic municipalities, or rather, or even municipalities that are willing to work with us, because we are now, as the national department, we are at a stage where we're saying we need to capacitate, where possible, municipalities or even our social partners who would then be willing to take over and implement or work on the guideline on the ground. So I'm calling this a partnership between our social partners and municipalities through SALGA, of course, and our provincial counterparts. Can we arrange that we meet maybe in first or second week in April, and then we discuss the program for the whole year? Because in our own plan for this year, we will be proceeding with the implementation of the guideline throughout the country, but the implementation needs to be systematical. That is why we need these partners on board to make sure that we reach every province and every municipality in there. We also want to emphasize that the role of municipal councillors, mayors, even MECs need to be notified. That is the process that is underway from the department. So once those figures, these political figures, are actually aware of the guidelines and the actual aim, the overall aim of the guidelines, will then be able to penetrate through municipalities, even those that are classified or identified as problematic municipalities now. I think it would be easier if we go through the political heads. And thank you for that.
Thanks, Dumasani. Understanding the sort of politics around this is really, really important, and certainly yourselves and SALGA can advise strongly on that as well. Melanie, I'm going to hand over to you. Musa Wenkosi, I do see your hand, and I'll come to you after Melanie.
Great, thank you so much. And I just want to briefly answer some of the original questions and then speak to the points, some of the points that were just raised. So I haven't been able to look at the chat, but I mean, the simple answer is yes, the Unilever pilot project is expanding, and we have new corporate partners who've joined, as well as PROs. And so it will be extending to new areas. and is introducing new technologies. I couldn't hear Leanda very well, but there is a technology we're using called BankQ, which allows us to track, the exact amount of each material that each reclaimer has sold and that each buyback center has bought. And I think that technology can also be very useful for the municipalities. And so Dumisani and Salga, I think this is maybe something we need to be looking at. The second point is just in terms of a very simple thing you can do as a municipality. I mentioned is to just first enable, stop harassing reclaimers and permit them to work freely, and then to develop ways of weighing the materials they collect. So this BankQ system we're using is a really fantastic one, and it also enables the municipality to work through buyback centers and register them. But even if you do it on a smaller, more informal scale, the way we're doing with the Unilever pilot currently, where we have our own systems to weigh the materials, you will automatically see a dramatic improvement in your reported recycling rate in your municipality. And I will give you two examples. When we did started our baseline study for the Unilever project, on one Tuesday, 30 reclaimers collected 4.4 tons of materials in one neighborhood. And if you extrapolate from that, the number of reclaimers in Johannesburg, the estimated number working, 5 days a week or 6 days a week, what we found is that, Pick It Up has never once met its targets in terms of how many recyclables it would extract from the environment. Based on our extrapolations, the reclaimers are meeting that within 4 months. So this is an annual target that's always being met by the informal sector in 4 months. And similarly, colleagues in Cape Town recently did a study of buyback centers. And I believe that the finding of that study by Rini Shank and Kirsten from Green Cape, as well as Alison Davison from Cape Town, I believe they found that reclaimers were collecting 10 times the amount of recyclables as the municipality was reporting on. So this is the most fantastic way for you to meet the goals set for you by national government, to get a sense of what's already happening and to begin to really see the economic sense in working with reclaimers by simply starting with what exists. The second thing in terms of, governing regulations, etc., Brazil has very progressive legislation that says that the recyclable waste from any government office must go to reclaimer waste picker cooperatives. And there's also legislation and constitutional court rulings in Colombia that says that anytime there's any kind of contract or shift to separation at source, waste pickers must be given first preference. And so, Dumisani, I hope you're still on the call. We had begun in the National Working Group to look at how to revise national legislation. And I think given the emphasis that's now being put on integration, the requirements that are there, it would be a really fantastic time for stakeholders to work with DEFF to begin to revise some of this legislation. I wanted to point out that in terms of things we can be doing at a provincial level, in the Western Cape, the department there convenes, I forget what they call it, but it's a waste forum, and it meets, I think, every quarter, maybe even more regularly than that, to talk about general waste issues. But they have brought me from Johannesburg to Cape Town at least 4 times, and other people as well, to talk about waste picker integration and support the municipalities. And I think it's been very effective. So I would really encourage this idea of KZN, the department, setting up a forum specifically focused on integration where we can all keep coming together in this way. And Dumisani, I think that your proposal of reviving the task team and including the provinces is really fantastic. And that is something that under the UNIDO project, I think we have resources to support you in doing this. So let's chat about that. And I will develop a little online questionnaire that I'll send to Kira to send to everyone here so that we can just start gathering some of your inputs and seeing how we can move forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Melanie, that's great. And we're very close on running out of time, but Musa, I'd love to let you have the last comment or question. Your hand was up, please do step in.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for the opportunity. Chair, I hope you can hear me properly. My network is playing games a little bit.
Yes, we can.
But please let me. Yes. Chair, my name is Umsankose Wamadlala. I'm representing COGTA KZN. The discussions that we are having here, I think they are very important for us as COGTA KZN because we have already started a process whereby we're trying to link up with different role players in the industry, specifically looking at the waste management programs within the municipality as part
Musa, we're
informal
starting
economy, but also not trying to formal and informal. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes,
Hello?
you're back. Yes, you're back.
Oh,
Thanks.
okay. Thank you. Yeah. So what we are trying to do is we will make sure that we avail ourselves because we are trying to make sure that the programs that we would like to assist the municipality and facilitate as the province will need all the stakeholders that are involved here. So in whatever discussions and working groups that will be formed, we'll be happy to participate, but also we'd like to make sure that we contribute as positively as possible because we can see the value of the waste management system within the municipalities as part and parcel of the job creation systems. So I just wanted to highlight that, Chair, to say, having noted all the discussions and the gaps that have been identified, that will help us a lot as a government in the province. Thank you.
So thank you so much. That's fantastic to hear that you're interested and very much willing to be a part of these conversations. That's fantastic. I know Melanie has put in the chat, I'm not sure if you've seen it, they had wanted COGTA to be part of these conversations, but it didn't happen at a national level. So yes, please, to your offer of being part of it at the provincial level. I think that's very important. We are 3 minutes over time. I wish there was more time. There are questions in the chat that unfortunately haven't necessarily been answered. There was an important question about the land that Jane Barrett had also asked us to look at again. I think this needs to be the beginning of many conversations. And please do email us if you're interested or have ideas about how we might continue this. We'll certainly be speaking to Salga again. And just to say a big thank you to Sandile and to Prashina. I really appreciate you being so willing always to co-host with us on these conversations that we think are so necessary to make our cities more equitable and more fair and just places to live. So thank you so much. I'm going to hand over to Sandile, but from the Urban Future Centre, I can't thank our participants enough, and thank you to Melanie, to Musa, to Lutando, and to Simon. Very much appreciate you being here. Sandile, back over to you.
Thank you so much, Kyra, for facilitating this session. Excellent work on your side, and Dr. Melanie as well for the presentation and the engagements from all of you participants as well. I think what is a take home for me, what I've learned is that LED wake up. And if we could make that a slogan of some sort, to just say LED wake up, waste is not just about environmental impacts only or keeping the environment clean, but it's really about the economic benefits that are available as well. So what I'll do to everyone, I'm shying away from this word of saying colleagues because you never know when they are counselors as well in the session. But what I'll do is that we have noted all the discussions that have been happening in the session, and we have noted the comments as well that SALGA needs to develop a newsletter around the issue of waste picker integration. And after this session, with using the email addresses that you've included in the in your registration, we will be sharing an outcomes document with all the participants and the way forward of the meeting. I'm looking at the time now. It's impossible for me to share the outcomes now. So we will be developing a document and sharing with the municipalities and yourselves. So thank you very much. What I'd like to do is that I'd like to take a picture of everyone, like a screenshot. If everyone does have like a piece of paper, can I just take like a minute just to write a word that you picked out from the session, and we can just put the word up on screen and we just take a picture with our little words. One word. So if you have like little paper, you can just put up your word. So my word here is wastepreneur. I'm not sure if it shows. It's wastepreneur. And do open up your videos so that we can just take a screenshot.
And Cindy, maybe if people don't have paper and pens because they might not have it nearby, they could always type their one word into the chat.
Yeah, it's fine. Or they can just
they don't use paper and pens anymore.
Yeah, we type. We can just open up our video so that I can just take a screenshot and we can use that as. Thank you so much. Hello, Tamlin. Nice to meet you. We've been chatting.
There you go. I've also got my word. Right, that's just about it. I don't have everyone. Okay, this is time, colleagues. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining the session. We will engage again in the future, and especially with DEFF as well. Dumisani will tell us if you're still part of the meeting. We do welcome the working partnership. And can you please also just draft an email so that we are able to follow up on the matter more formally. Hello, Mr. Nkosi. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone. Take care. Have a good day. Bye.
Thanks, everyone, for a great session. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. Cheers.
Thanks, Kira. Lovely session. Thanks, Lee.
Thanks, Prashina. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.